slide up, and then when you're ready, I'll pass it over to you to share. Okay, I see that you're ready.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet everyone as well.
Everyone, this is Bill Martinez. He's the new president and CEO of Adams County Regional Economic Partnership. This is an organization that IECRM works really closely with. And Bo, I am going to, you should be able to pop in and share your screen whenever you're ready. And welcome. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you everyone, and thank you for having me do a presentation to you all today. And let me just pull up the PowerPoint here.
Okay, great.
Okay, everyone see it?
Yes, lovely. Ooh, Adams County's never looked so good. That's a beautiful photo.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So why don't I start and give a little bit of brief background. How much time do I have, by the way?
20 to 30 minutes.
Perfect, perfect. So I'll just kind of start out and give you a little bit of background who I am. So I recently joined the Adams County Regional Economic Partnership here in March 2020. And prior to that, I actually did a sabbatical and did some economic development work for the city of Miami Beach for a year. And then I also worked for the city and county of Broomfield, and the city and county of Denver has their economic development director and economic development administrator, and did some work as well in the city of Phoenix, working on light rail transit and downtown development. So I've got quite the experience of working with different municipalities over the past 20 years. Prior to that, I actually ran a neighborhood nonprofit development organization right out of college, and then went and started my own insurance business. So that's kind of a brief background of who I am and where I've been. And so with that, I'll go ahead and start the presentation. So one of the big things that we did when I arrived here with the Adams County Economic Development is we started a discussion on how we could really leverage not only business resources, but also partner with other organizations within the region. And that conversation led to a bigger conversation with the Metro North Chamber of Commerce, who was really looking to rebrand themselves as well, and really move away more from the chamber model, but more focus on business and economic development, as the Adams County Economic Development Group was doing. And so this conversation just started off, you know, when I first came the first week, we brought both of our executive committees together, and we thought, you know, what a unique opportunity what we're in right now. You know, we've been trying to merge both organizations for many years, and, you know, unfortunately, you know, with this pandemic, it really caused to really rethink our position as a business organization in Adams County, the Metro North region, and how can we better position ourselves to help all businesses. And so we actually merged both organizations and rebranded to Adams County Regional Economic Partnership. And from that new partnership, we actually put together a what we call 5 pillars of success. And the 5 pillars of success focus on marketing, branding, and placemaking, because there's a lot of things happening within Adams County and the Metro North region. Most people don't know about it. I mean, it's kind of like the best kept secret. I think, you know, this area of the region has kind of been living in the shadow of downtown Denver and Denver South for many, many years and decades. But when you think about all the growth and development that's going to happen within the Metro Denver region, all arrows point north. And so we really got to position ourselves as an organization and as a community to take advantage of that opportunity that's in front of us. Second, we thought, you know, business expansion and location would be very important to our organization as we go out there to not only retain our existing businesses and grow them, but also look for new opportunities to bring in both national and international companies to our community. So we put a heavy emphasis on making sure that we look at business retention and expansion as well as relocation. So that'll be one of the things that we focus in on now and going forward, because we really think that, you know, jobs will continue to be very important to our region as well as investment. And if you all probably noted it, back in 2018, Adams County was actually the number one place for job creation in the country. And I expect that once we come out of this COVID-19 and this pandemic, and we find a vaccination and a treatment, that, you know, this will continue, the momentum will continue. And one of the big things that I read recently was Moody's Analytics and Forbes magazine actually identified the Metro Denver region as one of the top 10 cities in the country that will actually come out the fastest from this pandemic, and I would call, you know, the great recession plus. And so we're definitely looking forward to that and positioning ourselves for that success. The third one is membership and investments. And, no organization like this we are a public-private organization. So we rely on not only public sector investment, also private sector investment to do all the great work that we're doing in the community. Then the fourth pillar is really the Center for Leadership Development. We really want to make sure that we're leveraging all the great talent and leadership that's within our community, as well as going out there and training new leaders going forward. So that way we, again, can position ourselves from a talent and leadership perspective as a community going forward. Then the fifth one is really just focus on business and government relations and public policy. And so what we want to do is make sure that we're developing stronger relationships with our local, state, and federal elected officials, looking for opportunities to partner, as well as looking for opportunities to play a big role in public policy. As you all kind of know, in the Metro Denver region, we've grown a lot over the past 10 years post-Great Recession. We had an amazing run, and I think that run will continue for our region. And so one of the big things we want to do is we want to focus on making sure that we have the right transportation and mobility infrastructure in place. We want to make sure that we focus in on affordable and attainable housing. We want to make sure that we focus on education and workforce development, because these are all going to be very important pillars as we look to develop and grow our community going forward. So that kind of gives you an idea of kind of what this new organization looks like. What I like to say, it's one community, one voice, and I think it makes it much more easier for businesses, and especially businesses like yourself, to be able to work with one organization, not to have to pick one over the other. So I think it's a good time for us. Here's just kind of some of the things that we've been doing since March, when this pandemic really hit us hard. We've really been focusing on how we can work with our business community from a recovery, as well as reopening, and then looking forward and reimagine our economy as we gradually, hopefully come out of this pandemic and move our economy forward. And so some of the things that we're actually undertaking as we speak, we just are recently partnered with Adams County and launching a $975,000 mini grant program. And that program is going to be available for small businesses, 25 employees or less. And there's going to be 3 different buckets that these small businesses can apply for. And one bucket is up to $2,500 for business operations. They need to, purchase sneeze guards, get ready to reopen their restaurant or their retail operation or the bricks and mortar location for social distancing, buying PPE equipment, things like that. The second one is going to be focused on technology improvements. If someone wants to, be more of kind of like not taking cash, but having, more of a, I would say, a virtual experience with their customers, then we're going to provide up to $1,000 mini grant to make that happen. And then the third grant is going to be focusing on how do businesses work with all the guidelines that are coming out of Tri-County and the state. Some of them don't understand what those guidelines are, and some of them may need some legal help or consulting services to help them get over their hump so they can reopen their businesses, survive and thrive. And so that actually got launched yesterday. Another big initiative we're working on is a safe and open pledge campaign. And one of the big things we've heard not only locally but nationally is that consumer confidence is way down. And so with Safe and Open Pledge, what basically is going to do is give businesses an opportunity to not only make sure that they're abiding by the Tri-County state safer at home guidelines, but if they go above and beyond that, I think what we want to do is recognize those businesses for that effort. So that way, when they're trying to bring consumers and customers back to their business, they'll feel, that they're not only safe, but they're open and they're ready to move forward, as a business. And so I think that's very important to send a strong message to consumers that, we're going to be safe and we're going to be thinking critically and we're going to follow the guidelines. Another big thing that we've been doing ever since, this pandemic hit us is we put together a Survive and Thrive webinar series. And the past ones have been focused on CARES Act 101, just kind of helping businesses navigate through the CARES Act, because there's a lot of rules and regulations and legal ramifications around those small business loans that were sent out to the community back in March. So we brought together subject matter experts from, attorneys, as well as people from the Small Business Administration to really focus in on how we can help businesses to navigate all these great resources that were available to them. The other area that we looked at was access to capital. We heard loud and clear through a community survey that, access to capital, some type of rent relief or property tax relief programs are very important to their survival now and going forward. So we actually put together a webinar around access to capital, both from the SBA, the federal government, local resources, as well as, our banks. So that was a very successful one. And going forward, We're going to be focusing on more on the healthcare front because I know that there's a lot of issues still out there where businesses are trying to understand what guidelines that they should be following, when they should be open, what are the social distance guidelines, when can my business and industry open up and really start bringing customers back. So that's going to be very important now going forward. And then the other big piece, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be around transportation and mobility infrastructure. I think that's going to be very, very important. When you go out and talk with executives all over the Metro Denver region, the number one issue they'll tell you pre-COVID-19 was transportation, transportation, transportation. And then the fourth area is looking at how is our commercial real estate going to look like as we come out of this pandemic and look at the new normal from a retail, industrial, office, and mixed use and multifamily perspective. So those are some of the things that we'll be working on now and going forward. One of the big things that we're going to be doing as an organization is really starting to put together a strategic plan around the 5 pillars of success that I just shared with you all, and really making sure that we position Adams County as the next urban frontier, because I think what you're going to see with the economy, there's going to be a big push and pull between the central business district and the downtown urban environment to more move towards the suburbs. And I think, we've really got to think strategically on how this all comes together as a community. And then placemaking is going to be very important to us. So, I mentioned again, transportation, mobility, can't say enough, but I think, we got to think about what our community looks like from a recreation standpoint, open space standpoint, a housing standpoint, and really just bringing all these things together to really create a special place and a special community that represents a 21st century community. And then the other part of it is really just making sure that we start inviting the world into our community, because I think a lot of people recognize, the Metro Denver region is, growing, it's diversified of its economy, it's a really great place to live, work, play, and learn. And so we just need to let people know that we're open for business and we're ready to roll out the red carpet. And so the other part of I mentioned earlier on in the presentation was just making sure that we'll continue to be an advocate for business and industry, not only in the Metro Denver region, but also Adams County and the Metro Denver region as we continue to grow and develop. Any questions so far on the information I presented? No? Okay. So one of the big things as we come out of, as we deal with this COVID-19 and pandemic, one of the things I said, kind of, being in the economic development world for many, many years is, we kind of saw what happened in Denver in the 1980s with the oil and boom and bust. And, we said at that time, we really need to take a look at our economy. What can we do to really diversify it and look to bring other industries in so that way we can not only maintain our momentum when these recessions hit, but also to make sure that we can sustain ourselves going forward. And then fast forward to 2000, if you all remember the dot-com boom and bust, that was another area where we said, okay, we got to continue to diversify our economy. We need to look at different industry sectors. It's not just IT, it's not just energy and clean energy, it's not just, aerospace and aviation. It's a lot of other things that we need to be focusing on as in the community, so that way when we do see these drops in our economy, that we're able to survive them. And I think that's a big testament when both Forbes and Moody Analytics both said that we'll be one of the top 10 cities and regions in the country to move out of this fastest. And I think it was a good example back in 2007 when we hit the Great Recession too. We didn't get hit as hard as other communities. I can tell you, I left Phoenix back in 2007 and I sold my house right before the Great Recession hit for $600,000. And 3 months later, the house was worth $300,000. It was a 50% drop in real estate values. Denver didn't see that kind of impact. I think back in 2007, it was about a 20% impact to our housing prices. So, I think going forward, I think, we'll continue to see some slow growth as it relates to our GDP. But as a region, I think, things are going to be looking up as soon as we find a vaccination and treatment for this pandemic. One of the other big things is we look at, our employment, we rode this big wave of development from the Great Recession up to March 2020. We went from full employment to record unemployment just like that in a couple of weeks. And so that's been a challenge not only for our community, but across the country. And if you look at some other major metros across the country and other states, Colorado did get hit as hard as other areas of the community, but we also took a hit just like every city and state in the country and across the globe. And so we're hoping, as we continue to gradually reopen our economy and people go back to work, that we're able to continue to work with our local, state, and federal officials to make sure that they're bringing the right resources to the table. Because we need to really look at this, not like 2007 where, banks failed, and financial companies failed, but when they failed, there was no other place for people to go back to work. In this case, with all the resources out there, we're hoping that we can really build this big bridge between businesses and community and people. So when then we come out of this pandemic, people actually will have a job to go to. So I think that's going to be very important to keep, our eye on this as we go forward. So again, I talked a little bit about, going from full employment to record unemployment in a matter of weeks. Again, when you look at Colorado and generally, I mean, we had over 500,000 people that applied for unemployment. The Metro Denver region saw about 250,000 round up, with the numbers still coming in. I think, hopefully as we get through this pandemic and look for recovery and reimagine our economy, whatever that new normal looks like, that we'll continue to see, things improving over time. But I think it's going to definitely take us the next 12 to 24 months to come out of this, great recession plus bust. I know some people have said, maybe we're on the cusp of calling it a Great Depression. But I think, once we can kind of move beyond this pandemic and hopefully, our elections coming up this November don't create an even bigger problem and continue to put our economy in a downward spiral. But I'm crossing my fingers. I think just like everyone else that we'll be in a better position come November, come winter, and come next year. So as you can see, as I talked about how important the different industry sectors are here in our community, we really did a great job over the past 25 plus years of diversifying our economy. And I think that's what's really put us in a great position, not only to sustain, these shocks and waves as we see it through this pandemic, through the Great Recession, and who knows what's going to happen next. I always said back in 2007, I never want to live through another Great Recession. And fast forward 10 years later, now we're even in a worse position than we were back in 2007, because at that time, it was really the banks and the financial industry that were taking the biggest hit. And today, all industry sectors are being hit hard by this pandemic. I mean, there's only a couple of them out there that are not being hit as hard. That's some of them are, information and technology and software companies, as well as our grocery stores, our liquor stores. I mean, those are some of the things that are doing really well. Obviously, healthcare is still a very important sector for our community now and going forward. But you can kind of see how it's all lined up for us, from the Metro Denver employment growth by super sector. You can see that, some of our biggest sectors, are continuing to see, not only some negative territory, but we're also looking at some positive territory. But like I said, transportation, warehousing, utilities, the people that are really working on the front lines that are propping up our economy today and going forward are the ones that are really making sure that, we sustain ourselves as a community. And I think one of the important things that we need to think about as we come out of this pandemic is that how do we make sure that we make our society much more equitable? How do we make sure that not only are we protecting our frontline workers, but we're also paying them a fair wage? And I think those are all conversations we need to have as a community as we come out of this, because at the end of the day, if it weren't for the grocery store workers, if it weren't for the truck drivers, if it weren't for our healthcare workers, if it weren't for the people that are cleaning our office buildings, the bank tellers, these are all the people that are on the front lines that are keeping our economy going in. For some reason, we've in the past forgot about them, but going forward, we really need to make sure that we make sure we focus on that part of our population. Another big thing is, was the commercial real estate. We were, again, riding this really big wave. And from a Metro Denver standpoint, our vacancy rates were all lower than what you saw from a national perspective, from an office, industrial, and retail sector perspective. I would expect on the office side, we're going to probably see, some higher vacancies coming over the next 12 to 24 months. Because if this pandemic has taught us one thing, is that we really don't need to be working in an office setting. We actually could telework and perform just as well inside the office or outside of the office. And so that's really taught us a new lesson going now and going forward. I think, if you think about the past 5 years, the WeWorks and the co-working space were the darlings of our economy and our office environments. And I think that's going to change. I think you're probably going to see people maybe go back to more of a traditional office setting versus, being all put together in what I call kind of like a bull ring and let everyone just kind of, figure it out. And so I think that's going to definitely change. I think you're going to kind of see, people kind of moving back to the suburbs. I think you're going to see companies really rethink their strategies, especially for companies that really are looking at not only just putting all their employees in one place, but maybe putting them out in different locations and satellite locations. And I think that really bodes well for the suburban communities. I think about the city and county of Brookfield, and you think about Interlochen. 5 years ago, everyone said that office park was going to die. Today, looking forward 5 years, that office park is probably going to survive and thrive because people are want to be more spread out going forward. On the industrial side, I think, we'll probably see some vacancies occur just because we saw so much new construction come on board. And so hopefully, we'll see some more net positive absorption in the next 12 to 24 months, but I think it's going to be a struggle, until we find a vaccination, for this pandemic and we can move beyond it. But I think that's one of the sectors that will actually perform very well because you're going to see a big push to more regional economic development across the country. So you're going to see people wanting to really set up shop in the industrial sector as it relates to supply chains, manufacturers. It's all going to become much more centralized. And what you're going to see, if you all have heard kind of like the word that's called megapolitans, I mean, there's probably like 15 or 20 megapolitans in the world. And so I think the Rocky Mountain region is one of those that are going to be well positioned now going forward as we look at the new normal from an economy standpoint. Then the fourth area, which I think is going to be hit really hard, is the retail industry, because it's suffered kind of in between the bricks versus clicks, because a lot of people were, moving from shopping in stores to shopping online and purchasing online. And then you saw a lot of, big box retail starting to close or go bankrupt. And I think at the time, prior to this pandemic, retail was in a state of confusion. It didn't really know what it wanted to be going forward. I can tell you that food and beverage was doing really well. People wanted a more entertainment experience, authentic experience, and they wanted something special. They wanted to not just go into a store and buy a piece of clothing. They really wanted to be able to go to a restaurant, have great food, have great drinks, and be entertained. And I think that's kind of where we were going from that perspective. But this pandemic hit, and so I think we're going to see some really major changes in the retail industry. I think there's going to be a lot more closures, from a small business perspective, from a retail food and beverage perspective. And I think you're going to see some national chains start to close their doors. And I think, once we come out of this pandemic, given the growth that's happening within our community, the retail will bounce back, but it will definitely look a lot different before the pandemic and post pandemic. And so I think that's something that's definitely going to change, as we go forward. But I think what you're trying to see right now is that, there were a lot of companies that were going online, and there was some companies that, stood bricks and mortar. Now you're going to see a little bit more of a blending of that versus a, bricks versus click perspective. And then this slide just kind of really wanted to share kind of what Adams County looks like from a real estate perspective. We have over 10.6 million square feet of office space. It's a lot less what you'll see in downtown and Denver South. I think downtown Denver is a little over 30 million square feet, and then Denver South is probably mid 30 million square feet. So you can see that we have a long way to go as far as, as it relates to office development. But I think I'm very optimistic that, we'll continue to see some momentum in that sector going forward over the next 5, 10, and 20 years. The industrial side, we have 75 million square feet of industrial. Our vacancy rate at the time was 8%. I would expect that to inch up, but I don't think it's going to, go high into the double digits like what we'll see probably with office and retail. We have about 22 million square feet of retail, which we had a 6% vacancy rate at the end of third quarter of March 2020. And then the multifamily sector, I think, we're going to probably see a big slowdown in that area because I think people are not going to want to be in close proximity to each other. They're probably going to be looking to single family homes in the suburbs to really, not only look for a place to rent our own, but also for their family and being able to spread out. And I would say, maybe developing more of a staycations type mentality and building up your backyard and your home to be that place where you can entertain and do whatever you want to do as far as staying home and being safe. From a consumer confidence, as you can probably see, this pandemic hit us hard. We went from, a consumer confidence for the Denver metro area from 5.2% all the way down to negative 10%. So that circles all the way back to the beginning of the presentation where I talked about the Safe and Open campaign. And so that's where we really want to work with those bricks and mortar type businesses, the people that actually have physical interactions between customers and business, and really make sure that they go out and follow the guidelines that are being put out through the Safer at Home and through the Safer at Home initiative between Tri-County and the state, and really building up that confidence. I think it's going to take a long time before we get to a point where we're at 5 to 10% in consumer confidence. I think, once again, I'll say it again, the vaccination and treatment for this virus will definitely help, change that wave that we're seeing right now. Median home prices. So this is kind of ironic when you think about Metro Denver. I stood a year in Miami Beach, and it's a very expensive residential market. I know we kind of complain a lot here in Denver because, our residential home prices went up a lot over the past 15, 20 years. And so we're still a lot less than some of the major metros like Miami, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, but we're still an expensive market, and the wages really haven't been able to keep up with the price of homes. And so that's going to be a challenge for us going forward, especially as we want to not only keep the companies that we have here in the community, but attract new ones to the community. Because I can tell you, one of the big things that companies look at when they're looking to locate to our community, they're looking at the cost of real estate, they're looking at our taxes, they're looking at our transportation infrastructure, they're looking at education. They want to make sure they have access to a talented workforce, whether it's someone in the trades or someone that's a graduate or a master graduate or whatever. But that's very important to companies that are looking to relocate to our community. And so you'll see that from a housing perspective, I think a lot will tell what happened with the elections and how we find this vaccination going forward. But I think we'll continue to see more of a stable housing prices, but we'll probably see somewhat of a decline if we don't see some promise of vaccination here in the future. But overall, Denver's done pretty well. I mean, I can tell you that I purchased a home back in March, and I was able to get a very favorable interest rate. I don't know if you all paid attention to the rates right now, but they're all the way down to 2.75 on a 30-year mortgage, and that is really cheap money. So if you're out there looking for a home, probably still a good time to buy, but be very cautious, but yet optimistic. Here it just kind of gives you an idea of kind of what's happening on the multifamily perspective. We still saw a lot of permits being pulled from that sector, but I think as I think about the multifamily going forward, I think it's going to be very strategic on where they locate. I don't think they're going to build anywhere and everywhere. I think they're going to probably continue to look at where there's transit mobility, whether there's a light rail station, bus rapid transit, or access to a freeway. I think they're going to think strategically, is it access to, great open space? Is it access to urban amenities, or is it something in between? I think that's where it's going to be a little bit more picky about location, as well as financing. So I think, as they go out and try and get financing to build these projects, I think lenders are going to be much more pickier as they go forward. Any other any questions as I go along here? Don't see any? Okay. Some of the most active industries post-COVID-19, as we see, one of the big things I talked about earlier was these Survive and Thrive webinar series. So we've really been looking at bringing subject matter experts both locally and nationally to talk about how Colorado and the Metro Denver region can position itself now and going forward. And so, one of the obvious ones is biotech and life sciences. I think that's going to be one industry that's going to continue to grow and do well. I mean, it was already doing well around health and wellness. And I think our community is very well established in that area and will continue to grow. I mean, when you think about Colorado, I think we've been rated the #1 or #2 healthiest state in the country. And I think it all has to do with our lifestyle. So we're in a good position to really leverage that industry sector. I think transportation and logistics will continue to grow, especially now when we're starting to see, communities as what the new normal looks like, because we're no longer are we going to see a lot of offshoring and business coming, taking our stuff to Mexico and China. I think a lot of companies are going to be coming back to the U.S. and really looking to build within respective communities and regions throughout the United States. Advanced manufacturing is going to be a huge area, and advanced manufacturing, software, IT go hand in hand, because I think what we've learned through this pandemic is that when something hits, it hits not only communities, but it hits people very hard. I mean, we've seen, the stories from JBS here in our county where they had to close the meatpacking plant down because COVID-19. So I guess what's going to happen? A lot of these companies are going to pivot. They're going to pivot more towards automation, and so therefore we're going to have to pivot our workforce to more, not just, more of the manual labor, but more of the new labor, which is looking at more of software engineers, P technology and things like that. I think that's going to be an important part of our community as we look at workforce development. Another area that we'll continue to see some growth is in the food and beverage processing. I mean, I think, we think about soft drinks, water, energy drinks, healthy drinks. That sector is going to continue to grow. I don't think we're going to see a big change in that. Telecommunication is going to be very important along with IT, because I think a lot of companies are saying we don't really need that office space anymore. We can actually have our employees work from home. I don't know if you all saw the news that came out about Twitter. Their CEO said, you know what, none of our workers need to come back to work. They can actually work from their home. And so we're going to see more and more of that going forward. And I think clean energy and clean tech and energy will continue to be a very important part of it, as well as automotive. I think professional services, fire, and aerospace are going to be challenged right now, just because as the economy slows down, those are the first things that kind of get hit hardest, and then following that will be construction. So I mean, we're definitely in for some challenges, but I think as a region, there's definitely many opportunities to come. So here's and I talked a little bit about very early on how important business retention and expansion is important to our community, but also relocating companies back to our community. I mean, back to Colorado and to the Metro Denver region. And so one of the things that we're going to probably see, there's going to be a very competitive process as companies either look to relocate or expand, whether they stay in place. And I think one of the most important things that we can do as a community is to make sure that we let companies know how important they are to our community. Let them know that we thank you for being here, investing in our community, creating jobs, and making sure that they're part of it. And so I think as we think about that, I think companies are also going to start aligning themselves around corporate and social responsibility. So they're really going to want to be much more active in the community, whether it's around workforce development, clean energy, making sure that there's social justice things that are going on, and we're addressing those as a community. And I think that's what set us, our community, apart from everywhere else across the country. And so one of the big questions I think came up earlier on is how can your organization help, from an economic and workforce development perspective? I think, we got to continue to make sure that not only are we looking to work with entrepreneurs and startup companies and gazelles, but we need to work very closely with our existing companies to make sure that we keep them happy, healthy, and here, which I call H3. I think the other important part is that we need to make sure that we don't roll out the red tape, but we roll out the red carpet when it comes to business development. And then more importantly, I think that we really need to reposition our workforce, because we need to position our workforce for the future, whether it's in the trades, whether it's, getting certification, maybe it's, getting certification in IT or software or some other advanced manufacturing. But I think, now's the time to really, for us all to come together and see how we can not only work from a community perspective, but work with our schools, work with our universities, work with our community colleges, work with our trades. I mean, I think it's very important that we all come together and really put together a plan that looks forward and not backwards. And so I think that's where your organization can come in and really be that voice on behalf of the community, making sure that we understand all the issues and opportunities that are in front of us. And so with that, that concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions or even just start a dialogue on kind of where do we go from here after I share all this information with you.
Thank you so much, Bo. That was wonderful, fascinating, positive, and we're really pleased that you've joined Adams County. We're so fortunate to have you close by and part of our community. Does anyone have any questions for Bo? You'll need to unmute if you do.
Just one question.
Anyone?
What have you noticed with infrastructure? I mean, transportation, water, wastewater treatment, that kind of thing. The growth in those basically coincide with the growth of our community. So, where do you see wastewater in the next 5 years? Power, that kind of thing.
Well, I think, as we think about the Rocky Mountain West and the Southwest and the West in general, I mean, water is the new gold. It's probably been the new gold for quite a while. but I think people have ignored it for some time. And so when you think about north versus south, we have an advantage because we've got a lot of water resources, not only because of our farming community, but because we bought water rights coming from the Rocky Mountains. And when you think about the south, they really were focusing on more well water, and those wells are starting to dry up as growth and rooftops and people come to that community. They're probably going to have to really shift from what we're calling toilet to tap. But here up north, I think, we have enough fresh water resources to not only sustain ourselves right now, but also sustain ourselves as we grow. And so I think that's going to be a big, big conversation now and going forward. And from a wastewater perspective, I think that's going to be a challenge from an infrastructure standpoint, because, we all know that there's been systems that haven't been updated in many, many decades. And I think as growth happens, those systems are going to be needing upgrading. And the big question is, how do we pay for it? I know we've, paid for it through, public-private partnerships. We pay for it through metro districts, but you can only do that for so long so I look down the road from that perspective, we're going to have to be very creative. And similar to what we've done on the transportation and mobility standpoint, I think, you're probably going to see a little bit of a shift from people using public transit, whether it's bus or light rail. They're probably going to get back into their cars in the near term because they're just not going to feel comfortable. And two, I think, you're going to continue to see a lot more automation and an innovation in that area between transportation and mobility. I think one of the big disruptors were, the ride sharing. That was big, between Uber and Lyft. I mean, they really disrupted everything. And you start to see a decline in public transit ridership because they felt like that was more reliable mode of transportation and get you to point A to point B a lot faster. And then I think you're going to see a lot more automation when it comes to peopleless cars. I think that's going to be something that we're going to continue to see and drive. I think you're going to see definitely some changes how we travel both nationally and internationally. I know that there's a big move to space, and we've got Colorado Spaceport that is within Adams County. So I think to the future, I think you're going to continue to see a lot of changes, in both of those, those three industry sectors. That answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, it's truly we're going to move more and more towards P3s for sure, as we think about, public infrastructure. Any other questions? So let me ask you all a question. So what can we do to make sure that we're partnering with you all, that you all have a big voice, as we develop this strategic plan for the future? I would love to hear from you. What do you see some of the challenges are? Where do you see some of the opportunities? Because I think, having all you subject matter experts online with me right now, I think that it'll be very important for me to take some notes as well. So please share.
I don't want to dominate, but I got a quick thought. IEC, the electrical industry is employee-wise is aging, and there's going to be an enormous need for not only electricians, but people in my field within distribution. And when I and several other people here went to school, we had voc tech schools, we had technical schools. That's basically what IEC has become in a sense, but it's after school tech school. So, my thought is, where do you see high schools going in the future? Are they going to get back to the blue collar, the hands-on trade programs, or what do you see happening at the high school level, or even grade school level for that matter?
I think there's a big shift now. I think, education is slow to respond. I think, you just kind of have to be advocating that, everyone doesn't need a 4-year degree or a graduate degree. There's a lot of industries that will take people if we provide them the proper training at the high school as well as the tech school level. I can tell you for myself, I have 3 millennials. One's a college graduate, one got his associate's degree in water management and certifications through that. My youngest went to school for 1 semester, said, I really don't know what I want to do, but I know college is not for me. And so for me, I don't think that, right now the high schools aren't really preparing them to think about what other opportunities are outside of you not going to college? What can we do to help you and bring you along so that way you can get into a job when you leave high school and hit the ground running? I still think that we've made some improvements, but I still think we have a long way to go. I don't know if you all feel the same way, but I think that.
We do too. That is one of the primary focuses of what we do is to develop workforce. In fact, at our organization, just 2 years ago, I think we developed our workforce development coordinator role. Lundell Jackson, do you want to wave? Introduce yourself to Bo if you haven't met before. So that is one of the focus areas for our organization, is really reaching out into high schools and even younger, and creating a pre-apprenticeship program. I don't know if Lundell or Paul wants to speak to that at all.
Well, I will say, we're developing our pre-apprenticeship program, and that's just one avenue. I also, on behalf of IECRM, sit on the Adams County Workforce Development Board, as well as the Adams County Workforce Development Board Executive Committee. And yes, high schools are definitely a target. And it's very important that not just the instructors or the teachers, but it's very important that the message gets to the counselors and also the parents, because I think the parents are the #1 individuals who need to have this message given to them, because most parents, many parents, I won't say most parents, many parents, the message that they give their children or that they receive from anywhere is that your child will be successful when they go to college. And that's just kind of, whether that's a direct message or a message that is kind of subliminally given to them through name a thing. And so it is just, and it's a disservice that we give to the trades. We have devalued the trades over the many years. I know when I was, many years ago, 30 years ago to be exact, when I was in high school, I would never have considered being in the trades. Now, I want to be in the trades because I've seen, well, regardless. And now the message is slowly turning around, and there's still resistance within so many areas of the population about the importance of the trades. And so, the one small space or the one small change in our vocabulary that it's one of my personal missions is to remove the word alternative career from the trades, because it is not an alternative career. It is just an viable option as becoming a doctor, a journalist, or anything else. It is just an additional career option. So as long as we moved everyone, the community, to have that, to continue that conversation, and to have individuals who are in the trades to show and demonstrate just how successful they are and what their jobs look like. And that's my job, is to get our members out, because I am, like I said, I'm an educator. I chose to go to university and get those degrees, but to work with our membership and our community to get out in the public and to have those discussions with the youth, with the parents, with the counselors, with the instructors, to help them understand these same math skills and English skills and writing skills that you're teaching individuals to perfect to get into college. You can use those same skills to have a very successful and lucrative career within the trade of your choice, particularly being an electrician.
I mean, I agree. I mean, they're definitely, the conversation needs to continue, and we need to continue to educate not only our educators, but our families and community out how important and valuable, the trades are to the overall health of our community, and they're great paying jobs. And so I think that's what the other, people are missing. And so when you think about, where we're going, I mean, we are going towards a knowledge-based economy, and we're talking about a lot of automation that's going to happen in the community, but there's going to be a lot of infrastructure that'll need to be happening to build all this automation up and maintain it. And so I think that's where the trades can come in as well. But I definitely would love to work with you all, as we put together a strategic plan for the organization and the community going forward. We'd love to have your voice heard and making sure that, we're moving all in the right direction. Any other?
Well, thank you again. Are there any other questions or comments or Eric Estes just jumped off the call, I think. Any of our members want to join in the conversation with Bo about what it is that Adams County can help us with? Your presentation was absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm happy to share it with you all too if you want to copy it.
Oh, that would be great. Oh, we'd love that. Absolutely. Okay,
Definitely.
well, we'll reach out.
Well, thank you for, allowing me to share what we're doing as part of an organization in the community, and we are looking forward to partnering with you all as, we develop this plan for our community, because I really think that all arrows point north. We do have lightning in a bottle, and I think it's an opportunity for us to really think not only big, but, think innovatively in how we position our community going forward.
Thanks, Bo.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again.
Thank you, Bo.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Definitely
Have a
look
great
forward to having more
afternoon.
conversation.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.